India GDP grew by over 400% from 1600 to 1947. According to Indian economist Angus Maddison, when the world was full of farmers without any industry, India was 23% of the world population and 24% of the world GDP in 1600. That doesn't make Indians rich, that makes Indians poor. If India GDP was 50% of the world GDP, then Indians would be rich in 1600, but Indians were poor in 1600. Just 1% of Indians in 1600 controlled 99% of India GDP. By 1757, India GDP grew 70% according to Indian economist Angus Maddison, who is widely quoted by Indian politicians. However, India's share of world GDP declined from 24% of world GDP to 16% of world GDP due to Indian wars in India between Indian warring kingdoms, due to Indian political instability, and due to increased trade and competition from the modern world, especially Europeans. In 1757, the British controlled only a small portion of India's geography, about 2%. They also controlled a small percentage of India's population, about 1%. The British East India Company did not administer most of India until 1818. The decline of India's share of world GDP from 24% in 1600 to 16% in 1757 to 12% in 1857 can't be blamed on the British exploiting Indians and Indian resources. During the early 1800s, at the start of the Industrial Revolution, India failed to industrialize, and that's the fault of Indians, not the fault of the British. Indian handcraft home industries spinning cotton into thread and yarn for textiles were replaced with modern spinning factories in Lancashire, England, with raw materials cotton from Brazil, Egypt, and America, making cotton grower farmers rich and Lancashire textile factory workers and factory owners rich. Better and cheaper Lancashire, England yarn and thread was a benefit to the Indian weavers, getting better and cheaper yarn and thread than they can get from Indians in India. In 1857, Queen Victoria and the British Crown took over administration of the Indian subcontinent and invested heavily in Indian industries, agriculture, increasing land under cultivation 300%, increasing irrigated land, investing in cotton, jute, indigo, spices, investing in railroads so farm goods grown in the hinterlands could be transported to Indian port cities and sold around the world, making Indian farmers and Indian merchants rich. The British Crown invested in iron and steel production. Between 1857 and 1947, Indian GDP grew on average 4.8% higher than British UK, and India GDP grew over 1000% in just 90 years. The India GDP grew exponentially under the British. Ignorant claims that India's share of world GDP fell from 24% before the British to 4% when the British left just proves ignorance. The reality, India GDP grew 700% during the British and 1000% in the last 90 years of the British, providing a better quality of life. 94% of Indians, according to the Indian Sociological Society survey, 94% of Indians supported the British remaining in India and for India to be part of the UK with dominion status like Canada and Australia. Not even 18% of Indians supported British, not even 1% of Indians supported Indian freedom fighters or Subhash Chandra Bose. India GDP grew under the British and Indian quality of life improved under the British. India failed to modernize, invest in the Industrial Revolution, invest in Indians and India, and that's not the fault of the British, that's the fault of Indians. Year and GDP. $1,600,612 millions. $1,650,678 millions. $1,700,744 millions. $1,750,810 millions. $1,800,972 millions. $1,851.3 billions. $1,901.90 billions. $1,947 $2.8 billions.